Hey guys, I'm Courtney Stephens of QED Energy Associates. Thanks for being here today again for a QED quick start. This is going to be use cases for incrementals in PHDwin V3. Lots of times I get asked, why use wedge economics or incremental economics? How I explain it is pretty simple. If you have a single well that has reserves associated with that well that could be classified in more than one category, we may need to use incremental economics to make our model the most efficient. I'll pop up a graphic that I'm sure you're already pretty familiar with. But when we're working with offshore cases, there are different classifications for reserves that might be included in our evaluation. A simple way to talk about it would be PUD versus probable versus possible. We may have some reserves in a single well that can be classified as proved or proved undeveloped. Then there could be additional reserves that we could access with more investment or some technology that's not necessarily proved. We might be able to classify those as probable or possible. If it's all associated with the same well, incremental economics is probably the best way to handle that. In the case that I've got up right now, I have the PUD reserves for, I think this is supposed to be an offshore case. It happens to be a fake database. I have the PUD reserves classified with a case in the proved undeveloped category. For this well, the Chase Young number 6. Looks like this well is going to be drilled maybe 1/1/2036. That makes sense. There's a $6 million capital investment. That must not be offshore. We're really thinking about it. But it's a nice, offshore looking decline curve with a flat segment, and then some sort of exponential decline. Now, there are reserves in this database associated with this case in a different category. They're in the probable category. And it looks like that case has been set up as an incremental property. I will go ahead and remind you that you can set up custom views within PHDwin V3 so that you can see the types of information you want laid out on the page exactly as you like, or I should say laid out on the display exactly as you want to see them. I do have an incremental view that I have set up within this database, so I'll go ahead and show that. This case would represent the additional. This case has in it, this case that's in the probable category, has the additional investment that would be required and the additional reserves that we would get that we could classify beyond the proved in the probable category. And I think this is the way that most people think about incremental economics. You have a proved case. Let me flip back to them. I can actually just double click in my incremental case here. I'll go to the proved case. We can see that the IP on that proved case is about 5,000 for the PUD reserves with that $6 million investment. Now I'm going to double click and go to the incremental probable case. Now that has a $9 million investment. So that's 3 million more than the $6 million investment. And it's not a 5,000 IP. It would be an 8,500 IP. Again, the units of that or whatever is currently displayed on the graph. So those are in monthly units. You can always flip those to daily if you think in terms of daily rates, which I do as well. This is just a sample database. Turns out Chase Claypool is actually a football player. So this database was just set up for some demonstration and training over here at QED. So the idea is whenever we run both cases, in the first case, we would get all of the reserves under the curve that starts at that 5,000. But reported to the incremental case, we would only get the difference between the original case and this higher reserve category case, the probable category case. We would only see the difference in investment, and we would only see the incremental amount of reserves that we make over and above the proved case. That's what we think of when we think of incremental or wedge economics. There are other things we can use incremental economics for, and I see you guys using them all the time. And so I thought I would showcase something interesting in late stage shale. So here's another practice database that was set up at QED to use incrementals in a different way. The question that we got was, what if I have a base case, a PDP, that's late stage shale? We're out pretty far in the well's life, and we're thinking about installing an electronic submersible pump. if we pay to install the electronic submersible pump, we don't think that we're going to necessarily increase the EUR or change the shape of the decline curve, but we may get a quick bump in rate when we make an installation of an ESP. So what would the economics look like if we did that? This is a great place to use incrementals. We can have our original case that carries the PDP reserves with no further investment required. Then we can create an incremental case that would give us that uptick in volume associated with the installation of the pump and also carry the investment of the pump. It would allow you to quickly check whether or not you should do that install. And I think that PHDwin version 3 does it quickly and easily. Let's look at that workflow. So I'm looking at the Richard QED B11819H. I do like this shortcut trick. If you click the box on the graph with a single left mouse click, you'll notice that the graph will extend to the fullest extent of your display, and then you can single left mouse click it again and it collapses back down to its proper place where it's set within my view here. I like to zoom in real quick and just look at some of the metrics. This information that displays across the bar is super useful. That's just some basic economic information, and I can see that this poor old guy, Richard 11819H, he's going to go uneconomic in 2026, end of life. We'll go ahead and run this case real quick. I'll make sure I'm going to run a standard eco on the current case. I'm going to do case only. I'll run that in the previewer. It looks like the PV10 on that is right around $5,000. So it's not actually going to stay economic for that much longer. Obviously, he's kind of coming to the end of his life, little late stage shale case. Well, what I've done is I've duplicated the case. And on this new case, I've added about $200,000 worth of investment. I'm not an engineer, guys, so I'm not actually sure that that's a proper investment for an electronic submersible pump. But the point here is to just demonstrate how we would do that. So what I've done on this case is that I've added the investment that we would need to install this electronic submersible pump, and I've increased the projection to take into account the uptick that we would get in rate. Now, we could have a lot of arguments about whether or not the shape of this decline curve changes. I think the theory is that putting an electronic submersible pump on the well doesn't increase the EUR. It just changes the way in which the fluid comes out of the rock. So definitely, you're the reservoir engineer. I'm your mathematical modeler over here. I'm the reservoir engineering technician. So, please don't judge me too harshly. Now what we have the ability to do is we have the ability to run the economics on just the install of that pump. I'm going to run the current case, and I'm going to preview and see what would be the incremental benefit over and above the original $5,000 that we had on this well. I can see, wow, it would be an incremental benefit of $24,000. So you can look at these return on investment, years to pay out, internal rate of return metrics. Now that is just for this incremental investment that's over and above what we were already seeing on the Ridge case. I like the idea of using incrementals for things other than just the traditional use case for wedge economics. I'm sure you've thought of and applied some interesting wedge or incremental economics techniques. I tell you what, nothing could be easier than PHDwin, where you have let's go over here to this Alishon QB. We have an original case right here, drag and drop it to the incremental tree. Go to the upside case, drag and drop it underneath the original, and boom, all of the dynamics on those incremental calculations are set up and correct. It literally could not get easier than that. So I thank you for tuning in, and I'd love to hear about how you use incrementals to add value in your workflows in PHDwin. It's my job at QED to make sure that every purchase you make is one that you're happy with. If ever you have a problem with a QED service, please contact me directly. I'm Courtney Stephens, and I can be reached at our office. You can call us at 832-581-3758. the quickest way to get a hold of us anytime is to email us at dreamteam@qedea.com. Big thanks to John Smith and the whole team at TRC Consultants for putting on this fabulous PhDwin Week. What a great service. We truly appreciate you letting QED be a part this year and every year.